Hello and welcome everyone. This is John Person reporting for PA Stock Alerts. It is Thursday, December 8th. Well, today, based on, of course, the news out of Europe, we saw an equity market sell-off. Now, first off, we were looking originally for a pullback into this 1210 to 1220, but we were looking for it about 4 days ago. It didn't manifest until now. The good news is, if you take a look at where this fuchsia purple line is, which is a monthly pivot point or person's pivot point, it's the monthly what we call typical price. The market came right down into it. It also fell right into about just a little higher than the midpoint of this breakout candle. So from a technical perspective, it's still fairly healthy that we've been able to maintain this overall trend from the lows that we saw on 1125. So if you look at a corrective perspective, we hadn't even pulled back 50%. Now, from a trader's perspective, we don't want to see any pullbacks anymore. We just want to see this thing giddy up and go. But that's not necessarily true either, because we're just not long that many stocks. If we are correct and this market is forming what it could be considered the head and shoulders inverted pattern, with this August 9th being the left shoulder, October 4th being the head, and of course the low on 1125 being the right shoulder, and this of course being the neckline. If this is the case, then we need to really still hold in the value area no less than 12.0. I would say even last month's pivot of 12.03. So on an intraday basis, we might see dips back down there. This is one of the things that we have still a concern with. As long as this market holds down in here and starts to linger, then I believe that this bullish case is still on. So the key is what's going to happen in Europe. Is the market capable of selling off? And of course, we all know the answer is yes, the market is capable of selling off. So do we want to just put orders in there first? No, we want to hold off. In fact, I want to maybe make a suggestion, a strong recommendation. We're going to cancel the orders for AVD. And one of the reasons is not that I think that it's a bad trade. I just think we might get better prices. So I think that in the case of some other stocks that we're looking at, like FCX and Potash, for example, and let me bring those up to focus here. Now, FCX, typically we like to look at this gap to get filled, forget leaving any unfinished business behind, and then let's take off. The reason I like Freeport-McMoRan is the keyword is copper. If China is still going to continue to grow or see constructive GDP growth, then typically you will see a rise in demand in copper, and that would be bullish for Freeport-McMoRan. So it is one of the stocks that's on our radar screens right now. We just want to make sure that if we get in here, we get in on a decent price, number one, fill this gap, and then look for the overall market to give us signs that this bullish case is indeed intact. I don't think now's the time to look to get short the market, because we are still in a seasonally strong period of time. There's still a lot going on. We had positive economic numbers, positive jobs report numbers. So we can't all forget about that just based on what the ECB and the politicians are saying. So on the other side of the coin, we don't want to be too premature and early on a trade as well. So let's cancel AVD, see how it goes. We're leaving NVIDIA alone for right now. In fact, if you take a look at some of the other markets, one I wanted to show you was bonds, particularly. Even with the bond market, and I feel that what we have here is a potential M-top pattern. And so even though the market did rally, with the way the market sold off today, you would expect bonds, they've been able and being capable of trading up to 145, and they did not. In fact, they're down a few in the after-hour session. So more importantly, I think that this, as long as we maintain prices in this zone in the bond market, and tomorrow being Friday, if we see a recovery in equities, bonds settle back down, then I'm more comfortable still with the bullish outlook. And if you take a look here on a weekly chart of the bonds, the shooting stars, there's a lot of bearish patterns here, and from a seasonal perspective, this is the time that you want to be on the short side of bonds anywhere and the long side of equities. Now let's take a look at the overall weekly chart on the S&Ps. We had this huge move up the prior week, small pullback into the monthly pivot, and we're starting to form a little bit of a pattern within a pattern. We have the inverted potential head and shoulders bottom, but we're also forming kind of like this little pennant formation. And if we can maintain the support here, then it is my contention that the market will move higher. So we want to get through Friday. We want to see what our weekly indicators and studies look like. Get through the weekend, make sure there's no derogatory more news coming out of Europe, and we're starting to look at establishing long positions headed into the end of the year and into January. And that's our game plan. So if anything does change, of course we will shoot an email out to everybody. But in the meantime, taking a look at AVD, yes, it has pulled back. It missed us by a couple cents. But the way it's, I would like to see how it forms this week. Overall, longer-term patterns, let's take a look. I mean, a nice little constructive wedge formation. The only problem is if it pulls back into the lower end of the wedge, then we obviously would get stopped out, so we should be buying it, where our stops are. So we want to pull those orders in AVD. But the overall longer-term volume and, of course, our chart patterns here, we are in a weekly buy still, but we could see more of a correction in price, and we're going to hold off to buy for right now. That's all I have. I hope you enjoyed tonight's session, at least an explanation of what the numbers are looking like as far as comparative analysis, looking at stocks, bonds, looking at one other market just real quick. I wanted to mention also, if I may, and let me get up here. And forward 60. With all the bad news coming out of Europe, the euro currency is in a seasonally strong period of time. The funny thing is that it just hasn't been able to maintain breakdowns, and it's been holding in this kind of pattern as well, as you can see here. I would have at least expected to see with as much bad news, negative news on the European situation, why the euro currency hasn't fallen at least to test the lows from 2 weeks ago down there at that 132 level, or at the very least back in October when we were around 131.42. So, we'll give that another day or so, but if, of course, the market can't sell off on bad news, it just may try to rally on any news. And so as you can see, here's this little kind of triangle pattern that the market's forming. Lots of doji. A lot of dojis in this market, showing a lot of indecision between buyers and sellers. One way or another, it's going to break out of this wedge pattern. Typically, we see rallies towards year end, and then it's about the third trading day of January, we see a continuation of the downside. That's been its typical seasonal pattern. So just as, looking at some type of a tell in the market, if the overall equity is going to decline, then one would at least expect, maybe this European situation is worse than expected. Then why wouldn't we be seeing that in the euro currency right now? So that's a couple things that makes me suspect about all this negative news that's coming out of Europe. Looking at our advanced declines, our market internal, all the indicators that we have to look at still don't point to a massive decline coming, but we won't be able to confirm that until we finish the week out and look at some of the market action into next week. So therefore, we're still sticking to our guns, that the market outlook, you stick with the trend until the trend is over. And right now, the trend has been up, and we're going to stick with that for now. Thank you all very much. I hope you had a pleasant day, and we'll, of course, if any other news happens or changes in any orders, or we want to add to our positions, we'll certainly be sending an email alert out. Otherwise, we'll look forward to seeing you Sunday night here at PA Stock Alerts videos. Thank you.